Hey, what's up, bookworms? Welcome to this is the first book review of 2026. Been a little busy and a little behind, so we're now approaching April and getting the first one out. But rest assured, there will be then some more coming in the upcoming days and weeks because I finally got some time to record them. So here we go. First book, and I read this book back in January, is Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. It was published in 1995 and is the first book in the Farseer trilogy. A really kind of brief synopsis, because I like to do that. The story focuses on a character named Fitz. He is the illegitimate son of the Prince Chivalry, and he spends most of his younger life raised by this man Burrich, who is Chivalry's right hand man and his stable master. And then Fitz goes on to become an assassin for the royal court, hence the title Assassin's Apprentice. And many adventures ensue, including Fitz foiling a plot that threatened the throne of the kingdom. An interesting kind of thing. When I started reading this, I thought to myself, I'm like, do I have I read more science fiction or more fantasy or what's kind of the mix up there? And a quick look to the bookshelves right over here revealed that it's probably about 60-40, slightly more towards fantasy. But the interesting thing of that is all of my science fiction is generally pre the 1990s or post the 1990s, whereas all of my science fiction was all of my fantasy was definitely written in the 1990s, and Assassin's Apprentice continues that trend. I don't know if there's something behind that. Maybe it's the styles that were in the 90s. Kind of, I prefer those, or maybe that's just because that's what I read when I was younger, so that's still what I like now. I don't know, but it was just interesting nonetheless. And anyway, Assassin's Apprentice, I loved it. It's really fun. I couldn't stop reading it, which is a great sign. Um, you're immediately drawn in and connected to Fitz. He starts out basically as an orphan. He's been his very early life, like as like a toddler, was raised by his mother's family. And the story starts out with essentially his grandfather taking him to the royal court and being like, "He's your problem now." Which you're like, "Oh my god, this poor kid." And it just kind of goes from there. So he does not have an easy life by any means, but it really just it makes you feel really connected to this character. On top of that, Hobb has created a really deep and varied world. It makes it feel very real. It's not just full of like fantasy cliches, which is something that I really don't like. And because the world feels so real and varied, it makes you fall into it a little bit easier, I think. One like particular little element that's there that I really liked was all of the royal house. All of their names are supposed to be indicative of how they are supposed to live, essentially. So, like Prince Chivalry is supposed to be very true and virtuous, and then that's juxtaposed by the fact that he's had this illegitimate child. Then there's King Shrewd, who's very smart and cunning, and he's always making plans. And there's Prince Verity and Prince Regal, and there's others and whatnot. But it's a really neat little detail that I very much like, and I'm curious if that's going to play into future stories in any way, with maybe like juxtaposing their names and then what they actually do, and so on and so forth. Well, I'll see as I read more of them, but it was a little detail that I really liked, and I don't recall seeing it anywhere else. Like, yes, an author will often name characters that way, but it's stated obviously in the story that this is why they were named this way. So I just found that really interesting. Um, Something else that really draws you in is that the novel is told in the first person, so it's all from Fitz's point of view. Essentially, and there are sections where it's that he's an older man, writing things down, and then it falls into him telling this story of when he was a boy and about specific things, and so it that use of the first person narrative is also something that really draws you as a reader in, because you're reading I and your mind is reading I and you think I, and so it's very easy to put yourself in the place of Fitz. I also wonder if as the novels go on if this could lead to the revelation that maybe Fitz isn't always a reliable narrator, which is often the case with first person narratives, not always, but often enough. Or if it could just lead to, later in books where it's something in an earlier book he misremembered and wrote down wrong, maybe not intentionally, but on accident. And then something else could be revealed that you wouldn't expect because as you're reading it, you just naturally trust that Fitz is telling you exactly what actually happened. So it leads itself to some interesting situations that could happen later. So I'm curious to see how that goes. Um, it is also my only gripe with the novel. And it's not just Assassin's Apprentice, but it's any novel that's written in the first person. For me, I just find it removes a lot of the suspense of the novel because I know that the main character isn't in any mortal danger. Obviously, there are things that are going to happen you can't predict, but they're not going to die at any point because they can't, because then how could they continue to tell the story or write the story down? And I know that there are narrative ways around that. Like you could have, like I forget the name of the book, but I read a novel years ago where the first 2/3 is the first person, that character then dies, and the rest of the novel is continued on by another narrator that finishes it. So there are ways around it, but it's it's just difficult. And Hobb does a great job of making a lot of other characters and them seeming in peril. Other Burrich and other animals that are in the stable. Like there are moments where you're like, what's going to happen to them? Like what's going on? So that's fine, but just for me, that removal of the suspense, um, I'm not the biggest fan of it, but obviously not everyone will agree, but this is my review, not theirs. So what I think is kind of what matters. And I do think that the upsides of the first person narrative way outweigh that one downside because again, not everyone agrees with that downside. That's just me. So we come to the question always at the end of a review: should you read Assassin's Apprentice? Yeah, you should, especially if you like fantasy. And honestly, even if you don't like fantasy, this isn't so heavy fantasy with like magic everywhere and elves and nymphs and everything like that. It's more of a grounded fantasy, at least in this first book. I would say there is some supernatural elements to it, but for the most part, it feels like a more grounded fantasy. So I think even if you don't generally like fantasy, you'd probably like this because it's a fun adventure story. It's great, and I'm really looking forward to reading book 2 and then book 3 and then potentially even reading more books set in this world that Hobb has created. So for me, Assassin's Apprentice gets 4 bookworms out of 5.